Welcome once again to Phone Booth Fighting, an absolutely free podcast covering the world of mixed martial arts and so far beyond with myself, Richard Hunter, and this guy.
I'm Frank Mir.
He's a two-time UFC heavyweight champion, the current Bellator heavyweight contender who's got his next fight set, and actually we're going to talk about that for the first time here momentarily, as well as a whole host of other things, Frank, because it should be explained right from the outset for people who are watching on our Phone Booth Fighting YouTube channel. They're already probably putting two and two together, but we're not even in the Bent Pixel studios like we normally are. We're holed up in a corner of stately Mir Manor that Mrs. Mir designated for us to do the podcast because we've had a tough couple of weeks. People were worried that we had gone away. That's how absentee we were. But we're going to do a little explaining before we get into breaking down some fights. So, Frank, first of all, maybe you can explain over the last couple of weeks what's been going on with you, because there's been a lot of travel and some gigs involved.
Yeah, well, I got to work the Bellator fights this past weekend, so that took me out of town from Tuesday. Before that, between the grappling matches and going out of town, just been caught up, hard to get a hold of each other, and then, vice versa. It seems like when I'm free, then all of a sudden something comes up with you.
Right. We you did Quintet 3, Sakuraba's grappling promotion here in Vegas, so you were getting ready for that. You had to do that. Then you go out of town and do Bellator. You did those back-to-back cards that were this past weekend, and both of those were on the East Coast. Yep. So the whole idea was we were going to try to hook up and do some sort of remote recording. But unfortunately for me, we lost one of our dogs, and this was a big deal. It wasn't it wasn't one of these, oh, he's old and this has been a long time coming and all this sort of thing. It was a very sudden illness. And unfortunately, we lost Halsey, but we were in the emergency room with him, basically the doggy emergency room, for 10 days. And, we were up there morning and night, and they were doing everything they could to help him. So it was a real rough 10 days, and even at that, we were still trying to get the shows in because, of course, we had Conor Khabib, biggest fight in UFC history. We had the couple of Bellator cards to talk about. I think in the midst of all that, your fight was made official. So I know we have a lot to get to. And what I really just kind of want to do before we even get started, Frank, is just tell our listeners, we apologize for being away for a couple of weeks. But a lot of people may not realize that when it comes, and Porno Mikey got married. That was the other thing too. Our producer is actually, he got married.
It's off the market.
Yeah, that's right. Sorry, ladies. He got married actually the night of the Conor Khabib fight. So, Mir security team is reacting to something going on in the Great Hall. I don't know what's going on. All right, has somebody breached the moat? Bring the drawbridge up quickly. All right, Tuli and Baby will go see what's going on. But he got married on the night of the Khabib-Conor fight, so he was out of pocket as well. So we didn't have access to him. So it's been a crazy couple of weeks. But
I don't know if the turtle isn't going to walk off the edge.
Oh no! I mean, the latest addition to the Mir family, the turtle, was about to fall to its death off of the coffee table. So, all right, that's what our whole 2 weeks has been like. It's that turtle that turtle about to go off the edge of the cliff there is very metaphorical. But I guess just Frank and maybe you can take it from here. We want to tell everybody we appreciate them hanging with us, and a lot of people may not realize that, behind the scenes, there really isn't a lot of behind the scenes. I mean, there's Mikey when he's with us, but other than that, it's just us doing this thing. We don't have the big staff or anything. So
not as of yet.
No,
still working on that one.
We're working on it. And hey, if you want to help us work on it, click through that Amazon banner at phoneboothfighting.com. That's a very important way to support the show. Do your shopping on Amazon by clicking through the banner, and it's no additional cost to you, but we get a little percentage of all your purchases, and we can reinvest in the show. But we're back, and like I said, tonight we're at Frank's house, but we'll be back in the Bent Pixel studios for our next episode. All right, Frank, let's talk some fights. Tell me, well, let's start first. We'll just work in reverse order. We'll get to Conor Khabib here in a minute, but at this point, that's a week old or so. What's not a week old or so is the back-to-back doubleheader that Bellator did. 2 fantastic cards that you got to do well, you were on the desk. What would you call it? It was commentary.
Analyst,
yeah, analysis. So let's start with Saturday night's heavyweight Grand Prix matchup between your last opponent, Fedor Emelianenko, and Chael Sonnen. Fedor stops Chael in the first round, but not without a fight, not without being given a little bit of a test. I mean, that was a pretty fast-paced round, and it looked to me like Fedor was feeling it. I'm not saying he was gassed or anything like that, but I mean that was a faster pace and for longer than he's had to fight at in recent years. I mean, the fight you had with him was pretty fast paced, but it was short. And I was just thinking, man, that Chael gave him a pretty tough tussle of a round.
Yeah, Chael actually exposed him on some things as far as the takedowns against the cage, and I think Chael just was wrong so early that he was making some mistakes once he had top control. But some of the things Fedor was doing, I think that if I was Ryan Bader on the other side, I think he's licking his chops.
Yeah. You think that you told me that right away, that you think that this is going to be a great matchup for Ryan Bader taking on Fedor.
I actually thought that if Chael won, if he was able to catch Fedor with a guillotine or just grind him out, I thought he would be a more difficult matchup for Bader than actually even Fedor is, just because, especially after watching what Mitrione happened to him.
Yeah,
I think Bader, you can't just completely just try to keep your hands down to stop the shot. He hits too hard, and if he's determined just to change levels and run through you, he's really explosive.
Well, and we'll get to the Bader Mitrione match here in a second, which is what happened the night before. But to Chael and Fedor, first of all, there's been a lot of talk about the success that Chael did have, where he had Fedor's back, and then he sort of did that front roll. Yeah. Can you kind of explain to everybody what was happening there, or what Chael might have been going for?
That's a way. He said he did it in wrestling in college, and I wasn't aware of that as a wrestling move. I know it was a jiu-jitsu move.
Uh-huh.
And usually because a guy will turtle up, be on all four, and keep his elbows in. So if you have your hands connected in a seatbelt type position, over his shoulder with one arm and under the armpit with the other, and you clasp your hands, if you hold super tight and your head is basically on the top of your opponent's trap on the side of their head,
okay,
when you roll forward over the top of them, your shoulder kind of drives their head down, and it kind of works as a lever that now your body extends, and you're able to flip them over. So they kind of forward roll with you, and then boom, once they go, their legs continue to usually flop over, and you can put the hooks in, get 4 points.
Okay, but would he have wanted to do that if he already had his back?
No, that was a bad decision, but also he just got hit really hard.
Yeah,
so.
I actually thought, and maybe I wasn't too far off there, but I thought that when he did that, it was with maybe the hopes of landing in some sort of like anaconda or Darce position or something like. Could that have worked too?
I think it would have been better at that point. I would have just would have liked to have seen him just drive forward, maybe look for a wrist, knock his hips to the mat on Fedor's part. Give that to your mom. And wear Fedor out a little bit. Not even throw the hooks in and take a chance of being reversed. Drive forward, make Fedor's weight on his hands, and, pick an ankle, spiral ride, just forward driving pressure.
Mm-hmm. I actually guest hosted MMA Junkie today, MMA Junkie Radio with our friends George and Goes. And Goes brought up a good point that I had not really thought about with Fedor. Now that Fedor's older, of course, everybody talks about just naturally as you get older, okay, well, do they still have it? How much longer do they have? All that sort of thing. But one interesting thing to consider with Fedor is that since he has been in Bellator, he is facing only top contenders, like top talent. You know how there was that period of Fedor's career that sort of spanned where he was just he was taking fights that you never thought for a second he was going to lose. That kind of period right before he retired for the first time. And Ghost kind of made the point that, it's probably actually making him train harder. Like to fight Mitrione, to fight you, to fight Chael, that, nobody's a gimme in Bellator for him. And so even though he's a few years older than that period I was just speaking of, he might be having to up his game a little bit more than he has the last few years.
Absolutely. I think, Fedor's probably just rose to the competition. And, you have a career as long as he has. There's times I'm sure he's had ups and downs as far as his interest. I mean, it's hard to say that you have a 20-year-plus career and you're vigilant the whole time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, Chael, I mean, did the fight go about like you thought it would?
No, it was actually a little bit weirder than I thought.
Okay.
I didn't expect for Chael, when he got caught, to do some of the things he was doing.
Yeah.
And when he got takedowns, I expected him to work a little slower.
Yeah. Do you think that there was, and we haven't, I don't, did you talk to Chael after the fight? Okay, yeah, I haven't either. So maybe we'll get him on the show at some point and break it down. But, I also wondered, too, what he was able to gather from that first round of competition with Fedor, that, okay, it's a bigger fighter. Maybe I'm not going to be able to stand with him. Maybe I'm going to have to go for things sooner rather than later. I mean, I wonder how much he was game planning as he was going, thinking, that he needed to take some risks.
I think I think he was more rocked and just trying to create something to happen.
Yeah, right. Okay, so we had that. So Fedor will now advance to the championship fight. He's going to take on Ryan Bader because the night before, Bader took on Mitrione. Now, I believe that was another fight that you and I had talked about on the show and said that we both thought it was a stylistic nightmare for Mitrione, Bader's wrestling. Now, that being said, I did not think it. I didn't envision that much of a domination. Did you?
No, I thought that if Bader got in control that good of positions, I didn't think he'd get the takedowns, initiate them as quickly as he did, to be honest with you.
Yeah. It was because it was just it was rinse and repeat. Yeah. It was kind of like watching one of those Damian Maia take your back performances. Where one round is the second is the third. Bader is another thing I was talking about earlier today. Bader is a guy who, for as much success as he had in the UFC, it did seem like at a point he just kind of hit this ceiling. Like he was a perennial contender, but he never could quite get that title shot, main event, pay-per-view kind of thing. And that it seemed like the right time for him to jump to Bellator. Of course, he went over there. He claimed their light heavyweight title. Now he's one fight away from claiming their heavyweight title. I mean, he's a guy who seems like making the move to Bellator actually really helped him grow. I think he's a better fighter now than he was a few years ago when he was in the UFC.
Yeah, I mean, it might necessarily be equated to what promotion he was in before and now, but also just with age. As he's aging, he's maturing, he's coaching, he's developing, and now he's hit a couple pieces to his game that really completed it.
Yeah, it's and another interesting thing too is that we've still got one fight to go to crown a champion, but that Bellator has been able to get through this entire heavyweight tournament without any injuries, without any fights having to be re-racked, changed around, and I think it's been a real success for them. No,
100% agree. I think that I think it came out the gate sounded like a great idea, and it's came out with no disasters.
Another point, and I guess it's maybe largely moot now, but maybe not if Bader wins. But I noticed a comment that Matt Mitrione had made in the build-up to the fight, and he said that when these brackets were announced and it had all the light heavyweights involved in it, we talked about that. We did, not only light heavyweights, but guys like Mo, guys like Chael, who had even fought at middleweight. They were going to be at times on the smaller side of a light heavyweight. And Mitrione made the comment that if a light heavyweight won the title, that it would diminish the heavyweight division. And as I thought about that, I thought, I don't agree with that, because going back to the UFC for a second, if John Jones and Daniel Cormier fight for the heavyweight title, does that diminish it? No.
Not at all.
It's two guys who have been light heavyweight champions, and one guy who's already a heavyweight champion and another guy who's challenging to be a heavyweight champion. I mean, that's just the difference of moving up in weight class, right?
Yeah, I mean, and you're talking about it. There's such a disparity in weight that once you're over 200 pounds, things just change at a much less percentage than they are at the lower weight classes. That's why you go from like 145, 155, then 10-pound increment. Once you hit, they get 185, then they skip 20 pounds to 205.
Yeah.
Then 205 to the 265 mark, because it doesn't make much of a difference as the weight goes up. To the smaller guys, 2 or 3 pounds is a big deal. To the bigger guys, it's just not.
Right.
So a light heavyweight equates to a heavyweight, really, because, I mean, what light heavyweight nowadays at the top of the promotion doesn't walk around in the 230s?
Yeah. So the heavyweight title matchup is set. I also want to ask you quickly what you thought about the Roy Nelson fight, because Roy got finished, but not before he took a really nasty, blatant, illegal knee. All right, we're about to talk about Roy Nelson's fight. We had to take a break because Frank actually got in the fight of his life with a DocuSign thing online.
Password protected.
How did that? Yeah, there was a little accounting Frank had to do. He had to get some papers into the home office. How did that rank in some of your greatest fights? Where would you?
That's a solid number 4, man.
You're telling me, because I mean that was, I was not for certain you were coming out on top in that fight. I mean,
the printer almost ended up in the pool. We were at odds with each other.
So you're saying that there are actual fights in your career that you would have traded, you'd fight them over again, maybe, than go through that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I've had a couple quick, easy ones.
Sure, right. Yeah.
Tonight was a rough one.
Yeah, absolutely. That I
don't know if it was a full win. It was a split decision on my side.
Yeah. The historians will debate exactly how that contest went. All right, so back to Bellator's weekend doubleheader. And another former opponent, Roy Nelson. Roy obviously tough as nails. But that knee that he took was, I mean, he was stationary. He was on the ground.
I thought the fight was over, to be honest. Yeah. I didn't agree with the doctors. I mean, at that point, he's a grounded opponent. He took the knee, and then he put his both hands down, right?
Right.
I was talking to him about it afterwards. He had one hand down, and then he took the knee. He goes, "Oh yeah, unified rules." So he put both his hands, down, palms.
Yeah.
He's now a downed opponent. He took another knee to the head. He goes, maybe Sergey didn't get the same real meeting I got, so he drops his other knee down.
Yeah.
Takes another one, and it jammed up his neck, and it hurt. In fact, I remember telling his wife afterwards, I'm like, hey, I know Roy has a melon, like nobody else's. But his neck, man, I'm worried about. Like, taking those shots, and he's a big guy. It isn't like if that's a lightweight getting kneed, not that it's still not going to jack his neck up, but he only has 155 pounds behind it on the other side, pushing back against that knee.
Yeah.
When you're 260 pounds and someone knees you in the head, well, your neck doesn't push 260 back too easy.
Right.
You can crush a vertebrae.
Yeah, because, I mean, this is essentially like, because it's I guess you'd call it like a 6 to 12 shot. I mean, it's like a hammer driving a nail.
Well, and that's actually, and I tried to explain that to Jesse. I'm like, that's why in football they tell everybody to hit to see what they're hitting, because it's much more difficult to break the human neck coming back. In fact, guys more or less get concussions when they face mask to face mask, or even maybe the crown of the helmet. But to be hit on the back of the helmet on the top, it crushes on, and that's how people snap their necks. It doesn't take as much pressure to blow the spine out that way. And so I was like, hey, you might guys want to check it. But the next day at the airport, it was Sunday, we saw him. He seemed fine. He said he was a little stiff, but no big deal. And he just took the knees and I don't even know why because I was telling them. I thought when the doctor came inside the cage, he started talking. Then I can see the production crew that are governing the cage, the crew. One of them, starts signaling for a stool, and I was up there at the booth, and I looked over at Thompson, and I was like, "Oh, it's over with. Look, they're calling for the stool. Because they're not going to bring a stool in and set it down." I'm like, DQ'd, man. What a stupid way, to get DQ'd. And so, then all of a sudden, Roy talked him out of it. I was like, I don't know, man. If the doctor says no, and to come to find out, yeah, the doctor, I guess, said, no, it can't continue. It looked like he might have lost consciousness for a second, or I don't remember what they said that the doctor's reasoning, but the doctor's like, hey, this is done. Which I wouldn't have thought was a bad call, personally. I mean, because at that point, if the fight continues on, it's not even good for Sergey, because then it's like, well, you knocked Roy out, but how much did you already have him stunned with the knees, to the head? Then people call that into question. So even if I'm the person committing the foul, I want you to call the fight too, because if the foul is so egregious that you're going to call into doubt now my victory, well, then it's not even it's like not even a victory.
Yeah.
I can't win because I fouled you so hard that people are going to go, yeah, you won, but geez, man, the foul you did, really took it out of the guy. But I guess Dan Miragliotta told the doctor, he didn't get kneed that hard. I love when someone else who's not receiving the shot is like, it wasn't that bad. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
Thanks, buddy. Why don't you take your shirt off? We'll switch places. Tell me how bad it is.
Do you think that, because you think about what goes through a fighter's head, I mean, especially at the point, Roy's an older guy. He's in a good spot right now in Bellator. And I always quote him having said that, in the heavyweight division, you're 1 or 2 quality wins away from a title shot, whatever organization you're in. So I know all that. But is there maybe a thought that goes through a fighter like Roy Nelson's mind when you're at that age, you're in the spot that you're at, where it's like, if, you weigh, okay, maybe you stop a fight or something like that. But if I continue, whether or not fans remember exactly the circumstances, that the matchmaker remembers it, that the matchmaker, the promoter remembers it, appreciates it, gives me some sort of credit for that, or no?
I don't know. You have to ask the matchmaker.
Yeah.
I've never been in that role.
Debbie, has anything like that ever? Have you ever been in a position?
Would you appreciated it if he just took it on the chin and kept on going?
Princey, by the way,
think about it afterwards, right?
Carl Prince, Frank Striking coach, is just off camera here, and of course he works with ACB. That's how you and Princey met. Well, I guess what I'm saying is,
I don't know if it's really, honestly, man, they got short-term memories.
Yeah,
unless you do something really to screw the show up, the matchmakers, good or for worse, I don't think it's like it's on to the next one. They might remember certain guys doing certain things, but as far as it putting credit in the bank, no. Yeah. And in fact, I think a lot of fighters, and that's why I actually I even told Roy, I'm like, I think his wife Jessie was a little upset. She's like, the doctor called it, but Roy is stubborn and wants to continue on. I'm like, well, Roy could have very easily at that moment grabbed his neck and been like, it's off. Boom, fight's over with, right? Yeah. DQ win. He gets his win bonus. So if he was just out there for financial purposes, Sergey handed it to him on a platter, and then, hey, we'll fight again in 3 or 4 months. I'll get paid twice for the same fight base, essentially, right?
Yeah.
Roy's a warrior, man. The guy didn't do it. He decided to go ahead and keep on fighting, and they deducted 1 point. But actually, I got to overhear, and the great thing about John McCarthy being an announcer.
The 2-point thing, yeah.
Yeah, the 2 point. I had my headphones in, and I was listening to John say that. I was like, see, that's why you have to have that kind of background to be a good announcer.
Remind me, too, I mean, I heard that as well, but what was the criteria for that? How did he get to that? The criteria is
if it looks like it's an intentional foul.
Right.
And it causes damage, severe damage.
Yeah.
So basically, he showed that how Sergey landed 2 consecutive knees to the head.
Yeah.
It's hard to argue that he didn't mean to throw the knee.
Yeah.
So, where if it's an unintentional foul, I kick you in the groin while you're switching stances. Maybe I throw a punch, you throw a punch, and we headbutt each other, where someone's going to say, okay, that's an accidental foul. Now, if you keep accidentally fouling because you throw punches with your head or you throw a lot of low kicks, and regardless of, you'll still be deducted. You'll be warned, and they'll deduct a point eventually. And then it can get more severe, even on unintentionals. But the criteria for the intentional 2-point was that if it's intentional, like you meant to foul him, not that he's saying that Sergey meant to be dirty, but you meant to throw that knee to the head. Mm-hmm. You obviously didn't understand the rules, but regardless of the fact, you threw the knee on a downed opponent twice. He was very visibly down. You didn't accidentally throw that knee. And it wasn't like he was not accidentally in a 4-point stance. So because of that, anytime they figure that you intentionally commit a foul and it damaged the other guy, because it could pay such a
weight in the outcome of the fight, they say it's 2 points now.
Yeah, and there's different kinds of intent too. You know, as he said, just because maybe you didn't mean to fight dirty, guys have mental lapses. You know, they just. I mean, that was the knock on Husamar Polaris for so long.
Yeah.
You know, where he would hold on too long, and he swore up and down he didn't mean to do it, but for whatever
told you
reason,
what
he
I-
just gets zoned in.
Someone else told me it was Paul Harris, and I haven't met him, so I don't know, but they said that he's a super nice guy because I've mentioned in the past, like in gyms, you know, people are just talking.
Yeah.
You know, and if someone ever cracks a joke about me breaking bones, I'm like, dude, I've never broken anybody's bones in the gym. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know, and then we talk about Paul Harris, even in the gym, breaks people's arms. I'm like, is he just a dick? They're like, no, he's the nicest guy. They're like, we think he's a little on the spectrum. Like he just doesn't understand the cues that other people get.
Yeah.
You know, like he's a little bit like just not able to understand. I'm like, oh, not to say that he's silly or that he, you know,
Yeah.
he has any kind of mental incapacity, but just that his observations of stimulation coming in are just not quite where another athlete's would be.
You know what he could do, really use? It sounds like is a safe word.
Yeah.
Like just have his train like in the middle of a fight when nothing else is working. The trainer's just like marshmallow, marshmallow. And
Yeah,
it
but
just
we got the
snaps out of
universal safe mode. I mean, I've choked people out in street fights and they've tapped.
Yeah.
Everybody knows tapping now. They start, you know.
Oh yeah. Somebody thought that'd just be worth a shot in a street fight.
I've had guys do that to me before. They start
Might as
tapping
well
my forearms
give
and
this a
putting them to
shot.
sleep.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it's like, this isn't. What are you thinking, man?
maybe
Like,
he'll- maybe he'll
John
think-
McCarthy's nowhere around here, buddy.
Maybe this guy will think he's at work.
You're taking a nap.
Well,
You've got me to wrap my hands around your neck. You got to go to sleep.
Well, it was a great weekend of fights with Bellator. You did a great job on the analysis. Did you enjoy doing it? It seemed like it met with real favorable
Yeah,
reviews
I did.
online.
You know, I liked working
and
with Jake
all that,
Laser,
yeah.
and then the next day working with Jen Brown, and then both times having Josh Thompson there.
Yeah.
Super funny guy. I think he has definitely a different energy than I do.
Yeah.
So I think that we complement each other
We
well.
get it. I texted you because we have to get Josh on the show.
I
'cause-
asked him. He said no problem.
Okay, because people complain that there's
Not
not
a
a
lot of
strong
right-wing
enough
represent-
right wing influence on the show. Josh Thompson's a real right winger, and
He
he
actually-
likes to engage.
We actually
so we'll have
talked
some
about
fun.
that his partner is also very liberal.
Oh, is that true? Okay, I
yes. He
didn't
goes,
know.
he's about as liberal as he can get. And I was like, oh, contraire, my friend.
All right, good.
Wait till you meet my buddy.
Yeah, all right. I like the way that's setting up.
I'm like, he makes me look like a, a crazy
yeah.
conservative.
All right, we'll have to do that. Okay, so now let's talk about Khabib and Conor. I know it was about a week ago, but we haven't had a chance to do an episode since that happened. And I actually had to. This was like right in the throes of our ER situation with our dog that was in the hospital and everything. So that whole weekend was just a horrible blur to me. But I did see the fight. A lot's been made. First of all, let's talk about the fight itself. The fight itself went exactly the way I thought it was going to. You, any different?
I thought Connor did better than I expected.
Okay, you thought it would
Yeah. I mean,
not
well,
last
Connor
as long.
actually won a round.
Yeah.
I don't know if Connor won a round as much as I kind of feel that I noticed that a lot of the guys at the AKA, they're strategic fighters, man.
Uh-huh.
I've heard Daniel Cormier when he one time said that. He goes, I took off round 4. And I'm like, hey, you're a conditioned athlete.
Yeah.
I'm like, wait a minute. You guys use that as a strategy. When they're in 5-round fights, they'll take off round 3 or 4 if they've already, swept 3 rounds or if they need it in the 3rd round, knowing that, okay, if I win rounds 1 and 2, I can put it neutral for a round. Not that I'm going to lose it, but I'm not going to go after the guy. And I think that's kind of what we saw in the 3rd round when Connor started moving his hands. But for whatever reason, I think Connor kind of got into his own head. Like he didn't fight off his back leg and lure Khabib in. He came forward. And I thought Khabib was going to have a harder time trying to strategize that takedown. That's why, honestly, I think before the fight, I said I have it more 60-40 because Khabib has to come in and cross that gap to get in on Connor. And I'm like, once he grabs him, it's a wrap. I'm like, but he has to get him first. You know what I mean? And Connor hits like nobody's business, and he's so fast and so accurate. I'm like, well, there's a chance he could get him, but I bet Khabib. But I didn't think it was going to be, the first minute was or the first 3 minutes, I was like, it's really going to come down to what happens there. So I was surprised that Connor didn't land anything really of significance at all to stun. And then also he chased Khabib. Khabib started moving backwards. He chased him down, allowed Khabib to get on his leg. And then he actually was defending pretty well, fighting him off. And then the one part about the fight that really surprised me was how well Connor really didn't take any damage in the first round.
Yeah.
If for anything, Khabib kind of expended a lot more energy for a lot less results. And even though he won the round, I was like, wow, Khabib could get tired of that, like taking someone down, using so much energy to hold them down and not really racking on them. And the guy on bottom, Conor, wasn't really wasting a lot of energy. He had such long grips and handles, and he's grabbing Khabib's arms, and really Khabib had a hard time getting any ground and pound going that round. He started having success at the end of the second round. The second round was more or less what I really thought the whole fight was going to look like. And then in the third round, when Conor started getting loose, I was like, oh, well, that was a good round. And then in the fourth, once Khabib took him down, Conor I think he kind of just threw the towel in mentally because he had the overhook and he decided to go to all four. And I know they're calling it a neck crank, but it's not a neck crank if it doesn't twist the spine. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, okay. So you don't think it would, because I mean the neck crank. I
wasn't a neck crank.
In terms of a neck crank, let me just say this: whenever I hear, because there have been neck cranks in fights that people have tapped to, and the novice will always say, "Well, it wasn't even under the chance." A real neck crank can make a lot of people submit. It's incredibly painful.
Painful because you're putting pressure on the spine.
Yeah.
So you're either going to put you're going to lock someone out. Like Randy was really good at that. He would be riding you like a crossbody ride, so he'd figure four from behind. If he was behind you, he wouldn't put both hooks in. He'd put one hook on one leg. So say he had my right leg.
Yeah.
Then he'd reach over and trap my chin and turn it this way. Mm-hmm. That was where the crank was. So he's pulling like a palm-to-palm choke, but he's pulling your chin to where you're trying to look behind you.
Oh,
and
right.
because he has your opposite hip trapped, you can't follow him. So you look like an owl having your head twisted off. And what most people do is the pain is so extreme, no one wants to tap to a crank.
Yeah.
It's a bitch move. You usually pull it into a choke, and then now the guy has you in a choke, and then you try to fight out of the choke. Yeah. And most of the time, the guy's really good. You're screwed on the choke. You're going to get passed out if you don't tap.
Yeah.
But when Khabib put the rear naked choke attempt on Conor, it was on the jaw. Conor's neck was not in any kind of stress. I mean, you can go back and watch the fight. His neck is in the same line. So where's the cranking? Mm-hmm. What pressure's on his spine? Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. If his head was to one extreme, to side, or if his head was being shoved down, like we do a lot of cervicals, like a crucifix where your arms are trapped and then someone's driving your head down, those type of pressure that causes your spine's being jammed in a direction it doesn't want to go. And your body starts sending off screaming type of pain sensors like, hey, like you're like getting a chicken getting its head twisted off. The only thing that Conor really probably felt from that was pain on his chin and just panic that he had, Khabib on top of him. And I think that, we saw it in the Diaz fight. I mean, Diaz slipped the choke in and he tapped immediately where he wasn't even close to passing out. He didn't give it any attempt to fight hands. Yeah. And this one, too, he kept both hands on the mat. He didn't reach up to protect his own neck. I think that, for phenomenal of a striker and a kicker and a puncher that he really is, on the ground he panics when he gets in a bad position. If he's tired and you get him on top and you put something on him, he stresses out. And then I actually talked to one of the teammates from AKA. He could probably talk about it. I don't want to name him because, talking shit or whatever. But he said that they were all making jokes about that leading up to the fight, that basically they felt that they could put one hand, the choke that, Joe Rogan got in trouble for calling. Yeah. They thought that Conor would tap to that. They were like, they were 100% sure that once they put stress on Conor that basically just put their hand on his face and he would tap.
And also the particular point in the fight, too. It's not the first round.
No, he was already gassed and fatigued.
Yeah, and it's far enough into the fight that he can do the math in his head, go, okay, maybe I've won a round here, but I'm not going to probably win this on the cards. I'm going to have to finish this guy. Can I finish this guy? How's the rest of the fight going to play out? I was going to ask you if you saw any parallel to the first Diaz fight, because...
No, because... I know Khabib caught him in the fourth round. Was it the fourth? With the overhand left? Second round. Mm-hmm. I know he caught him with that shot and it stunned him. Mm-hmm. But Diaz hurt Conor a little bit more with his hands, where Conor shifted gears and shot on Nate. You have arguably the greatest striker in the whole division changing levels and shooting on somebody. They're shooting for a reason. You know what I mean? Like, you're shooting on a black belt in jiu-jitsu. You know what I mean? Like, why are you taking that shot? He was hurt. I think he was stunned by the Khabib shot, but I don't think he was hurt. And in fact, the fact that it happened in the second round, you see that when he comes out in the third round, he actually was starting to look good. Like he started finding his range. He was moving. He was getting loose. And it started looking like, I was like, oh, this fight just got interesting.
Yeah. You're right. I mean, maybe it goes longer than we thought it would, but in terms of stylistic problems, it seemed like it pretty much played out true to form. Now, the aftermath of the fight was really where the unpredictability came in. Everybody's seen that, the melee, the brawls in the crowd and all that sort of thing. You know me, Frank. Even whether or not I agree or disagree with someone, more than anything, I hate a bad argument. Just if you're presenting a flawed argument. And Khabib is presenting a flawed argument. He keeps saying that, well, you can't talk about someone's country or their religion. And in my head, I'm thinking, no, you 100% can. You can be mad about it.
You're half right.
But here, you could totally do that.
I can completely talk about anybody. But if I talk to you in a way that is to cause an aggressive reaction from you, if I'm insulting you, that's actually not protected by the First Amendment. I can't sit there and start calling you. If I start screaming at you and calling you a silly, that's how people get removed from protests. That's actually illegal.
Okay, but you're talking about inciting violence,
violence,
right?
So if I sat there and called a Muslim man a dirty rap Muslim, like that's hate speech, and that's probably going to upset somebody.
Hate speech is protected, though.
Hate speech so
in this country.
So I mean, I that's not inciting something. If I were to sit there and call a homosexual a derogatory term,
no.
If I sat there and I knew that one of the men happened to have a husband, and I'm like, silly faggot, like that's not going to be considered.
No,
causing an argument inside it.
No, it would have to be. I mean, now if you're talking about like inciting,
I thought you weren't allowed to incite.
No, I mean, hate speech is protected. That's why, like, the Klan can march, Now,
I mean, they're rhetoric, but they're not insulting. They're coming up with facts that could be insulting.
Oh, no.
But if I sat there and started sitting there and calling you names,
they can
I have
yell.
The free speech yell at anybody that's calling
yell
names.
the N-word. You can do all that kind of stuff. Now, I mean, it depends. Like there can then cross a line where you could probably make the. Let me give you an example. Let me think about this for a second. So if you were doing something that in a court of law could be seen as inciting a riot, maybe that, and then you could, so let me argue against my own point for a second, because maybe then you could say, hey, if he was yelling over to this group of Muslim, if it's not just about Khabib as a singular person anymore, hey, he's yelling into this group of people trying to incite them, maybe that. And I'm not saying that in a court of law those things aren't taken into consideration.
He's allowed to, but I mean, when we say that you can't do something, it'd be like the equivalent of me saying that you can't, go bang your friend's wife. I firmly believe that that's a huge no-no.
Right.
Now, obviously, legally, I can go have sex with anybody's wife.
Yes.
But I would say that, no, you can't do that, and it's very deserving of an ass whooping.
Well, sure, but if you're then prosecuted, if you were the physical aggressor, you're going to be the one who gets the sentence, and your buddy's you're going to be going, yeah, but he was.
Yeah, but I don't think that. Maybe the way I'm understanding, I don't think Khabib is saying that you can't do that. I think he's saying that they're I understand his terminology is that there's consequences for talking about someone's father, their faith. I
understand. I'm taking it literally, and I'm probably taking it much more literally than he is.
Oh yeah, totally.
But it's just when I hear that presented, I'm like, this doesn't. And of course, there's probably something lost in translation too, because English isn't his first language. But at the same time, it's kind of like I guess what I'm looking to hear more of is, hey, if you cross these certain lines with me, I don't care what the repercussions are. I'm going to act on it. As opposed to, well, you just can't. And I'm like, actually, you can. I mean, some countries you can't. This one you definitely can.
Now, I think that it's the latter. I think that, or the first one you brought up. And I believe you think the same way. I think Khabib it's lost in translation. The way he's trying to express it is that you can't. If you speak about my wife or my mother or my children, this is no longer a business type of promoting a fight we're now putting us on a personal level.
Yeah, and hey, I was on Khabib's side in the whole proper 12 Irish whiskey thing. Is the teetotaler? I was like, man, if that had been me,
Man, that dude's a genius for that shit.
Oh yeah,
You know, it's actually broken like all the records for selling whiskey
oh yeah,
coming out. Yeah.
yeah. I
You know, also too though, on the flip side, because obviously I understand from traveling so much in those parts of the world that how the words upset certain cultures. The UK culture, I've been getting kind of a breakdown from Princey over there, that they see that as completely normal to talk shit and be there and that they find it kind of weird that anybody takes it seriously.
yeah.
Did I do that justice?
Yeah,
The fact that you would get upset afterwards after the fight, it's like, hey, wait a minute, man.
Yeah.
We're just talking shit. Like,
yeah,
you really didn't for a second ever think it was real.
Yeah. They call each other cunts, and nobody gets divorced.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For most part.
Yeah, that's that's the nuclear option over here. Yeah, for sure. Well, now let me ask you this: do you have any interest in seeing that fight again?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think if Conor comes with a different mindset not to come forward and try to attack Khabib and uses his distance and his footwork and I think more kicks against Javier Mendez, who has a phenomenal double too, or Chad Mendez, that dude has a monster double and in fact took him down. But when he was still throwing those spin side kicks to the body and was hurting him. And I think that, Conor, obviously has a phenomenal left hand, but when he was at his most dangerous before, I think he used more than just the left hand. I think he's had so much success with it now that he's kind of maybe using more. But when he fights like a full 4-weaponed animal using both hands and both feet, I think he's extremely dangerous. When he just uses his boxing, I think he's dangerous. He's only half the machine now.
I think that the aftermath of the fight actually will do the best job of selling a potential rematch.
Oh, absolutely.
I thought it was the kind of thing that up until that happened, I was like, there's going to be other important matchups to be made. I don't know if, it's odds are that stylistically it would, more or less shake out the same way a second time. But once all that drama happened, I thought that would be the way that they could sell it, just based on the emotion of it.
Yeah, I think now there's a huge. Look what they did for the first one. They were showing footage of. That was the only problem I kind of had issue with. They understood that Connor's antics, helped sell the fight, throwing the dolly through the bus. They let the commissions deal with it. And then, I think the UFC largely stayed out of Connor's way when it came to that situation. It was like, okay, no, the commissions and legal proofs will take precedence. And I think that if they would have done that with this situation, go, hey, look, there's a Nevada Athletic Commission here. They're the ones who are going to suspend and fine everybody like they did and stay a little bit more out of it. I think maybe they wouldn't have gotten some of the criticism of maybe being biased or unfair and then trying to compare, apples and oranges. Because, what Khabib could have hurt a lot of people that were there. I could hear that argument, too, that maybe they do have to take more consideration. That's like, well, you did that at a fight. You know what I mean?
Well, and that's the thing. It's like once you get into the realm of it's like why you can't do certain things inside a riot, like we just talked about. Things going on in a crowded theater as opposed to a one-on-one confrontation or a private confrontation, like you just said. And trust me, as someone who narrowly dodged a full Monster Energy drink can to the head when Conor was throwing those at a press conference, I had my own brush with a concussion over that. So. The other thing is, too, in a situation like that, if there's not at least one person in that melee that didn't slip and fall and now they can't go back to work or whatever, they're going to be very lucky. Yeah. Don't you think?
Yeah, I actually was looking out for that. Now, it's been 2 weeks and we really haven't heard anything, even though, they can come out months later,
I've been thinking about taking this to stage for stand-up, but I don't know if you've ever noticed or not when you're going back and forth to the airport here in Vegas, but there's a billboard on your way out of town, essentially. So if you're going to, a departing flight in Vegas, there's a lawyer that has bought a billboard, and he's got the website injuredinahotel.com.
Oh, I understand.
And I thought to myself, boy, you want to talk about grasping at straws. You came to Vegas, you went bust, you lost all your money, and that's the last straw to try to get your money back.
Get up on Vegas.
I slipped in the buffet at Circus or whatever.
Yeah. But, I mean, I think that, you know what? Look, in a couple months, I think this is all going to go away. Everybody's going to forget about it, just like the memories will start to wane. And I think it'll be a great narrative for having a rematch.
Yeah.
I think that Conor, was kind of really so dominated in the fight that had Khabib just raised his hands afterwards. I think Conor probably would have had to fight somebody else before he got back in there. But I think that with the numbers that they did and with the way that Khabib jumping over the cage and and some of Khabib's crew attacking Conor, I think the video now shows that Conor threw the first punch, but I mean they jumped over the cage and I'm pretty sure they weren't running over there to get an autograph from the guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I realize he threw the first shot, but I don't think you have to wait for someone to hit you if you know you're about to be in a fight to start throwing down. You know what I mean? Like I'm a firm believer that that's not the smartest approach. Maybe that's from working in strip clubs for 9 years or 8 years. But if I know you're about to hit me, I'm going. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like I'm not going to sit there and go like, well, I waited till he hit me in the face. It's like there might not be a second chance. You know what I mean? So,
yeah. Well, a couple other quick things here before we close out, and I'll hit this other quick UFC item before we get to the most personal item of the night, which will pertain to you in your next career move. So John Jones is going to return. He's going to challenge Alexander Gustafsson. Right. Now, here's my
that's awful.
Tell me if this okay.
I'm on DC's side on this one.
I am
guys.
too, but I think we're
that's
probably on the
up.
same page here. And let me tell you. First of all, I wish the UFC was not so focused on all these fights having to be for a title. That we just can't possibly be entertained by John Jones and Alexander Gustafsson fighting again if it's not for a title. I mean, that was the most competitive fight of John Jones's career.
I mean, some people thought that maybe John didn't win that one.
Let's do it again. Yeah, I think
so. I mean, it's to be a 5-round fight because it's a main event and it's for the number one contender spot. And now you have Daniel Cormier possibly able to do something that so far no one's been able to do. Conor won 2 belts simultaneously, but he was never had the opportunity because of the boxing match.
Right.
To defend them, but to have the 2-belt champ actually defend both belts, holy shit! Like you just took that away from Daniel, and I'm not grasping what Cormier did wrong. What more could he have done?
I don't think, and actually, let me react to that in a second because to me, there's 2 points to it. The first was that I was everything doesn't have to be for a title, and I always use this as an example. But if you go back far enough with this in boxing. One of the greatest matchups in boxing history, time and time again, was between Marco Antonio Barrera and Eric Morales. Every time they delivered. Yeah. Sometimes those fights were for titles. Sometimes they weren't. I watched every one of them, and do you know I can't tell you which one was for a title and which one wasn't. No. It didn't matter. You just knew that when they fought, they were going to be great fights. Now, to specifically Daniel getting shortchanged here, and I agree with you on this. Here's why. Because I don't get the reasoning of, okay, a guy beat you, but then we stripped him of the title, we penalized him for something, and now he serves the suspension, but as soon as he's done with the suspension, we're going to strip the guy who didn't get penalized for something in that last fight, and he's going to contend for the title that he got stripped of.
I don't have an answer for you, man. If I was Daniel Cormier,
it's a bummer,
to say the least.
Yeah.
I don't even know what was going through his head, how much anger for... I mean, the guy does everything right.
Yeah.
I mean, whether you're a fan of DC's or not, like, the guy is still a poster boy for an all-American guy. You know what I mean? Like, if you want someone to date your daughter, like, that's the dude. Like, that's the kind of guy you want to have come knock on your door. Like, the guy's... And
he's a great fighter. I mean, the other thing, too, is...
he's a great representative of the sport. He's a good commentator. Like... I mean, he's never had a problem, and I think between his Olympic and college career and fighting, I think I read somewhere he's had like over 70 times he's been drug tested. Yeah. There's never been a hiccup, never been an issue.
Man, talk about not rewarding someone for hard work.
Yeah, I don't get it's just the circumstance of the fact that it was stripped from Jones to go to Cormier after that result was overturned, and now it's coming off of Cormier for no reason no fault of his own, and then it's being offered in a fight with Jones. So anyway,
because this is the way they could have done it. This is the way I thought.
Mm-hmm.
I thought they were going to do this. If John Jones is going to fight Gustafsson, they fight for the number one contender spot.
All right.
You know, Daniel goes and defends the heavyweight title once.
Which he's booked to do. Derek Lewis.
Now let's say, it's Derek Lewis, so he's going to be successful.
Okay.
I mean, Derek's a funny ass motherfucker, and he hits like a Mack truck, and he has a big heart. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, he has about the same chance of beating Cormier as I do of hitting a grand slam in a Major League Baseball game. Like, it could happen.
Very tough fight for him.
But, I mean, there is the chance he could land. You know what I mean? But I just probably not going to happen. So then he goes and comes back, and now he can fight whoever wins between John and Gustafsson. If he cuts down to 205, both belts are on the line.
Okay.
Because you made the heavyweight, and now you're fighting light heavyweight.
Yeah.
So as long as he makes 205, both belts are now, because he's the 2-belt champion. Mm-hmm. Now, I mean, when's the last time that see what like they missed out on? Like that would have been a historic event.
Okay, I see your all right. So what you're saying is at that point we could look at it like two guys.
Whoever wins, let's say John beats Gustafsson. Now John is facing Daniel Cormier, and both the light heavyweight and the heavyweight belt are on the line. Or let's say it's Gustafsson,
right.
And whoever wins becomes a 2-belt champion automatically. The first time ever 2 belts were both defended or won on the same night.
Okay, because, 2 guys who make the 205-pound limit are going to walk in as heavyweights the night that they fight once 100%. They rehydrate, and as long as they're close enough within range of each other, they
it's
would
not like
be.
some guy's going to hydrate 40 pounds more than the other guy.
Well, that would have been interesting.
That would have been see what they missed out on?
Yeah.
No foresight.
Yeah.
I mean, and my dumbass figured that out.
Well, all right. Speaking of figuring things out, you got a new opponent to figure out, and it's not the fax machine. That was tonight's fight, but that was not televised.
It still might end up in the pool, but you leave. I just don't want you to see me act like a fool.
That one was not televised. But what will be televised on December 14th from Hawaii is your fight with Javi Ayala. So we alluded to this a few weeks ago on our last episode. You knew who it was going to be. Everything, just couldn't announce it yet, and now it's been made official. So thoughts on the fight?
Well, I mean, Javi Ayala, man, we've seen what Sergey did to Roy, and Javi knocked him out. Sergey in 16 seconds. And then, he's had a tough fight since then.
Congo.
Yeah, he fought Congo, and he was doing well in the fight against Congo. I actually thought he was winning. Mm-hmm. And then he just, he has certain tendencies in the way he strikes, and he ran into a punch that Congo threw. And, hey, I know what that feels like.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You run into shit because you're leading with your head a little bit to throw power, and, and that could happen. That's a mistake that, sometimes we make. Mm-hmm. And then, he fought a pretty grueling, hard war with Roy. Roy's wrestling ended up winning out. So, I mean, I really feel like I have a huge advantage in the grappling area. So, obviously we have to strike until we get in there. But I think his best chance of winning is, landing a big shot. So I plan on taking that away from him as early as I can and ride him out.
Yeah, I know a win is a win, and fighters like yourself aren't in the habit of taking requests on a cocktail napkin the way that a hotel lounge piano player is. But it would be fun to see the old Frank Mir submission.
Yeah,
start racking those up with that. Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, that's going to be Friday. That's also going to be another part of a Bellator doubleheader. I like the fact they're doing these.
I didn't like working it. That was rough.
Yeah,
I liked working it, but after we were done with the show on Friday, we all got into a bus, and I was sitting there bitching to you, and you're like, that sounds like a roadie day.
That's what it's like being in a band, man. You finish the show, you get in a bus, and you wake up in the next town.
Yeah, so it was like 5 a.m. We get back to the next hotel. They hand us our keys. Princey came with us so I can work out, and Mrs. Miro just ran into the room and just fell face down on the bed.
Yeah.
And then got up at noon or 11. I think we got up at about 11 because I had to.
Just in time to go to rehearsal.
Rehearsals. We had to leave. This time they gave us till 3 because they understood, and also too they were also setting up.
Yeah.
So I worked out in the morning with Princey, and and grabbed the bite to eat in the shower, and ran down and caught the bus. Walked over to the arena. It was 3:15, and did it all over again.
And I was talking to Josh Thompson earlier today when I did MMA Junkie. And wait, I'm sorry, not Josh. We were talking about Josh Thompson earlier, Michael Chandler, because Michael Chandler and his rematch with Brent Primus is going to be the headliner of that card. And he was talking about how excited his wife was to go to Hawaii, and I said I sensed a similar reaction from Mrs. Mir. I think she was. If you told her that you just had to leave Monday and go over there and do the whole fight camp over there, she'd probably be all right with that.
I think she would be.
But except though, I know she's very concerned about not missing my fight on December 1st. This is the first time you and I have both trained for fights at the same time.
Yeah, this will be interesting.
Yeah.
I love you a lot too, because that's the same night that Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder.
Oh yeah, we were just talking about. I hope that having.
No, I've not.
I hope that for Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury that having two high-profile fights on the same, even though
I don't think they were anticipating
countries.
Your fight being that night.
Right.
Hopefully it doesn't take too much of a hit on the pay-per-views.
We may be doing a matinee though. I don't know what the actual timing.
Cool.
I don't know that it's in the evening, so I think it might be during the day.
So we'll be watching the locker room with your victory.
Right. You're just, because you're there to play. I said one very specific role of backpack specialist, but the other thing I need you to do come fight time is backpack specialist, sure, for weigh-ins and everything, but for the fight time, I need you to literally block the cage door so I can't get out.
I know how that is. That was my dad's old job.
Oh, yeah. Well, you're wider
Don't
than he
let me
is.
get near the exit.
Well, you're wider than he is, so I think you're the guy to plug into that doorway. Yeah, so that's going to be December 1st, and then your fight on December 14th. So that's big news. So that'll be on, I don't know, it'll definitely be on the DAZN app, and Paramount Network, I think, is going to televise it as well. So that'd be good stuff. All right. Well, let's do this, Frank. Let's wrap this one. And again, apologies to everybody that we were away for a few weeks. We're back at it. Can we get another one in this week?
Yeah.
Maybe studio?
Yeah,
we'll
we'll
be
do
back
studio.
Bent Pixel Studio later
tonight
in the week.
I didn't know that Ronan had a game. He never has games on Monday.
Oh, yeah.
So I plan on going to the studio, and then all of a sudden they had a game, and we're out there freezing our asses off.
Yeah, you're always at some guy. I did tell my Jennifer on the way over, I said, one thing about us, I said, I'm glad none of our dogs are involved in sports leagues, because we would be out at a different game every night the way
I'm doing the countdown until Bella can drive.
Oh, yeah. That's going to be a game changer.
It's funny, back
in
the day, you used to breed farmhands.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? People had 9, 10 children because they wanted
Right.
someone to help.
Right.
Now I think we breed taxi cab drivers.
It's I want to see. Yeah, that's true. I want to be here for the when it dawns on Bella that what it means to turn 16, because she's going to hit 16, keys to a car in her hand, and she's going to think freedom. And right at that moment, Frank's going to go, you remember your two younger brothers, right? They have places to be.
Yes. Absolutely.
Awesome. All right. We mentioned the Amazon banner at the top of the show, but it bears repeating because we can definitely use the support from you guys, especially as it gets close to the holidays. I know everybody's going to do their holiday shopping on Amazon. So, Frank, remind everybody about the Amazon banner on the front of phoneboothfighting.com and how that helps us.
Well, just by clicking on that Amazon banner on phoneboothfighting.com, it transports you to the Amazon page. And when you do all your shopping for your wants and needs, a very small percentage at no extra cost to you will come back to hear us at the show.
That's it. You can also look us up in iTunes if you want to do a solid that won't cost you anything. Look us up in iTunes. Click subscribe if you don't already subscribe to the Phone Booth Fighting podcast. But click on the 5-star review. That helps us stay at the top of the ratings. If you have a moment, write a favorable line or two in the reviews. We are overdue to read some of those on the air, so maybe later this week when we're back in the Bent Pixel studios, we can do that. One more item of business. Frank, tell them how to find us on social media.
Phone Booth. On Facebook and Instagram, you can find us at Phone Booth Fighting. At Snapchat and Twitter, it's just Phone Booth Fight.
That's it. For Frank Mir and for our audience of Princey, Carl Prince over there, who's been nodding approvingly throughout the taping, I'm Richard Hunter, and we'll see you right back here next time on Phone Booth Fighting.